So what I'm doing now is drilling the hole in the end of the handle to receive this little brass inlay. So the history of this, when I first started turning, I had difficulty parting these off cleanly, and as a result I came up with filling the end with a piece of brass. Now it would be actually less work for me to just part it off and be done with it, but I kind of like the way it looks with the little brass piece in the end. So that's where we are. Then squeeze a little bit of CA in there. Probably don't need it, but all right. Then I'll file this off and then just touch up the end with a little bit of sandpaper. And then the next step is to insert the blade. I'll do that in just a minute. And now this is pretty close to being finished. All that needs to be done now is to mount my blade, or to install my blade into the handle. And then there's some little epoxy work that I need to do to close up the hole. I'm gonna bring the camera in a little bit closer to show you what I mean. Okay, so in the first video I showed you the first part in turning the handle is actually I drill the hole that is going to receive the blade. And as you can see, obviously the hole is round and the tang on my blades is rectangular and flat. So when I drive this home, there's a gap on either side of the tang, and I just don't think that looks good. And I think the blade should be held in with something more than just the friction of it being driven home into the handle. So I'm going to put the blade on now. You'll notice I put painter's tape on the blade, and there's just a practical reason for that. I put this right into the vise, and when I drive the handle on, I don't want to mar up the surface of the blade, so I just protect it with several rounds of painter's tape. And you can hear when it hits bottom, the tone changes. And I can take this off now. And now you can see that the blade is driven all the way into the handle, but you've got the gap on either side. And I just think that that's unsightly. And again, as I mentioned, I think it's good to have something more than just the friction of the handle holding the blade in. So I'll mix up a little bit of 5-minute epoxy and put that in. I'm going to mix it up and then I'll come back. So this is some 5-minute epoxy that I use for a variety of things. For installing my blades, I use them in my marking gauges for affixing the brass wear plates into the front of the fence. And what I have found over time in doing this is I wait just a minute or so after mixing it to let it set up ever so slightly. Because as I put this in, as I put the epoxy into this hole, if it's a little bit thicker, it tends not to flow all the way down into the bottom of the hole, and thus requiring me to continue to put layer upon layer of epoxy to fill up that hole, which is just, I mean, it's unnecessary to do so. So I can tell just by kind of moving it around a little bit when it's at the consistency that I want. And you'll notice that I've got the handle wrapped in just a little shop towel, just so that if I get a little bit sloppy, it doesn't get on the handle. I've already gotten it on my thumb. So I just take this and I use the razor blade as just kind of like a little palette knife, and I just push it in there. And I go from side to side. And usually this takes, I mean, it's 5-minute epoxy, but it needs to cure for longer than that. So I generally will do this. Like if I were doing this early in the morning, I could come back to it at the end of the day and layer in some more if there's any gaps in the hole. But as it's now later in the day, I don't know that I'll be able to do that with this one. There's really nothing more than that. I don't know if the camera will pick up on it, but you can already see that the epoxy that I put in there has started to flow down into the hole a little bit, creating a little bit of a dent, or for lack of a better term. So, and this is beginning to get set up a little bit more. So as I kind of knife it in there, because it's a little bit more set up, it tends to fill and fill flat, if that makes sense. And you'll also know when this has gone too far. It starts to get really kind of stringy, and that that means it's a little bit too far gone to be working with. It gets messy quickly. But I've still got a little bit of open time with this. So that's about it for installing my blade. So that's where it is right now. As I said, I'll wait for this to set up. I'll set this over on the other bench upright, and inevitably some of this epoxy will probably settle a little bit. And no worries, I'll just come back and dab in a little bit more. And once I'm satisfied that that is where it needs to be, I'll clean off the blade. It's got residue even just from the factory, from where it was made. It's got a little bit of oil on it, and it's got some sticky stuff from the painter's tape. But I'll clean that up, sharpen it up, give it a once-over in terms of the finish, and just give it an inspection. And if it needs some more shellac, I'll put some more shellac on it. If not, I will put some Alfie Shine hard wax on it, and this will be ready to go. So that's what it looks like right now. I'll shoot some pictures of when this is finished and add those to the end of this video series. If you like this, please click like, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.